Have you ever looked in the mirror and had the unsettling feeling that the person staring back at you wasn't really you? Not because your face had changed, but because something deep inside had gone silent. Maybe you've noticed it in small moments. You laugh, but it doesn't feel real. You smile, yet something inside remains empty. You achieve goals you once dreamed about, but instead of fulfillment, you feel strangely disconnected, almost as if you're watching someone else's life unfold. Most people believe this feeling is caused by stress, or burnout, or simply getting older. But Carl Jung believed something far more unsettling. He believed that many people spend their entire lives becoming someone they were never meant to be. Not because they choose to, but because they slowly forget who they really are. And the most terrifying part, it happens so gradually that you don't even notice it's happening. Every year, another piece of your authentic self disappears. Another mask takes its place, until one day, you wake up wondering why nothing feels meaningful anymore. Why success feels empty. Why relationships feel distant. Why life itself feels strangely unreal. The world tells you to improve yourself, to become more confident, more successful, more productive, more attractive. But what if that's the wrong question? What if the real problem isn't that you haven't become enough, but that you've spent years becoming someone else? Carl Jung called this one of the greatest psychological tragedies of human existence. Not losing your job, not losing your relationships, not even losing your dreams, but losing yourself without ever realizing it. Because the most dangerous prison isn't built with walls. It's built with expectations, with approval, with fear, with the endless need to become the person everyone else wants you to be. And once that prison is complete, you no longer remember where the mask ends and where you begin. If you've ever felt like you're living on autopilot, if you've ever wondered why you no longer recognize yourself, or why an invisible emptiness follows you no matter how successful you become, stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you'll understand why you don't feel like yourself anymore, and why Carl Jung believed that this painful feeling isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of your awakening. If you've been feeling like you're no longer yourself, the question isn't what happened to you. The question is, when did you stop being you? Most people believe identity is something they consciously create. Carl Jung believed the opposite. He believed that long before you discovered who you truly were, you learned who the world expected you to become. Think back to your earliest memories. As a child, you didn't question yourself. You laughed without thinking. You cried without shame. You spoke your mind. You imagined impossible worlds. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You simply existed. But slowly, the world began teaching you a different lesson. Good children don't get angry. Stop crying. Be polite. Don't be so sensitive. People won't like you if you act like that. Each sentence seemed harmless, but together they became something much more powerful. They became instructions. Instructions about which parts of yourself deserved to be loved and which parts had to disappear. Without realizing it, you began editing yourself. Not because you wanted to, because you wanted to belong. Carl Jung called this mask the persona. The persona is not who you are. It is who you learn to become. It is the version of yourself created to survive, to fit in, to avoid rejection, to earn approval. At first, the persona protects you. It helps you navigate the world. It teaches you how to function in society. But over time, something changes. The mask becomes so convincing that even you forget you're wearing it. You begin believing your role is your identity. You become the responsible one, the successful one, the strong one, the person who never complains, the one who always says yes, the one everyone can depend on. And little by little, the real you begins fading into the background. This is why so many people wake up one day with an overwhelming feeling of emptiness. Not because they've failed, but because they've succeeded at becoming someone they were never meant to be. The tragedy isn't that the persona exists. Every human being needs one. The tragedy is believing the persona is all you are. Because beneath every mask, there is still a voice. Quiet, patient, waiting. The voice of the person you were before fear taught you to perform. The person who still remembers what joy felt like before it needed permission. The person who never disappeared, only became hidden. And perhaps, the reason you no longer feel like yourself is not because you've lost who you are. It's because you've spent so many years protecting the mask that you've stopped listening to the person beneath it. Carl Jung believed this moment is not a failure. It is an invitation. An invitation to ask one question that almost nobody dares to ask. If I stopped trying to be who everyone expects me to be, who would I become? Because the answer to that question may be the beginning of the most important journey of your life. If the persona is the mask you learn to wear, then what happened to the real you? Did it disappear? Was it destroyed? Did life slowly erase it? Carl Jung believed the answer was no. The real you never vanished. It simply moved into the shadows. Every dream you abandoned, every emotion you were told to suppress, every part of yourself that felt too much or not enough, was pushed out of your conscious identity. Not because it was wrong, but because it no longer fit the image you believed you had to maintain. Jung called this hidden world the shadow. And despite what many people think, the shadow is not made only of darkness. It is also where your greatest strengths have been waiting. Your courage, your creativity, your curiosity, your passion, your ability to love deeply, your authentic voice. The tragedy is that many people spend their entire lives trying to improve the persona while ignoring the extraordinary person hidden inside the shadow. Imagine owning a magnificent house. One day, someone tells you that several rooms are unacceptable. They lock the doors, cover them with furniture. Eventually, you forget those rooms even exist. Years later, you complain that your home feels too small. You never realize that half of it has been locked away. This is exactly what happens within the human mind. Every time you rejected a part of yourself, another door was closed. Every time you chose approval over authenticity, another room went dark. Eventually, you began living in only a small corner of your own psychological home. That is why life starts feeling empty. Not because something is missing, but because so much of you has been left unexplored. And here's the painful truth. The shadow does not remain silent forever. It begins calling your attention. Sometimes through anxiety, sometimes through depression, sometimes through anger you cannot explain, sometimes through the overwhelming feeling that your life no longer belongs to you. Most people try to silence those feelings. They distract themselves. They work harder. They scroll endlessly. They chase another achievement, another relationship, another goal, believing the emptiness exists somewhere outside them. But the emptiness isn't asking for more success. It's asking for more truth. Jung believed that every emotional crisis carries an invitation, not an invitation to become someone new, but an invitation to return to the parts of yourself you abandoned years ago. This is why healing often feels unfamiliar. You are not building a new identity. You are remembering an old one. The one that existed before fear became your teacher. The one that smiled without permission. The one that spoke honestly. The one that dreamed freely, the one that never questioned whether it deserved to exist. Perhaps the reason you don't feel like yourself anymore is because your true self has been patiently waiting, behind every mask, behind every fear, behind every expectation. waiting for the day you finally stop searching for yourself in the outside world and begin looking within. Because according to Carl Jung, the person you've been trying so desperately to become has been inside you all along. Perhaps the most confusing part of all this is that your life may look perfectly normal from the outside. You go to work, you pay your bills, you spend time with people, you laugh, you make plans, you continue moving forward, and yet there is a quiet emptiness that never seems to leave. No matter how much you accomplish, it follows you. No matter how much people admire you, it remains. No matter how busy you become, you cannot outrun it. Many people believe this feeling means something is wrong with them. Carl Jung believed something entirely different. He believed this emptiness is not a sign that you're broken. It is a sign that your soul is no longer satisfied with living through a mask. Think about the last time you achieved something you once desperately wanted. Perhaps it was a promotion, a relationship, financial success, recognition. For a brief moment, you felt happy. Then, the feeling disappeared. You immediately began searching for the next goal, the next achievement, the next version of yourself. Why? Because the persona is never satisfied. Its entire existence depends on becoming more successful, more admired, more respected, more accepted. It constantly whispers, once you achieve one more thing, then you'll finally feel complete. But that moment never arrives. Because completeness cannot be built upon performance. It can only be built upon authenticity. This is why so many outwardly successful people secretly feel disconnected from their own lives. Everything around them has improved, except the relationship they have with themselves. Jung believed the unconscious eventually reaches a breaking point. It grows tired of pretending. It grows tired of sacrificing truth for approval. And when that happens, life begins sending signals. You lose motivation for things that once excited you. You begin questioning your career, your relationships, your purpose, even your own identity. At first, this feels frightening. You think you're falling apart. But what if you're actually waking up? What if the emptiness you've been fighting is not an illness, but an invitation? An invitation to stop asking, what else do I need to achieve? And begin asking, who have I been neglecting all these years? Because perhaps the person you've been neglecting is yourself, the child who stopped dreaming, the adult who stopped speaking honestly, the soul that quietly accepted a life built around expectations instead of truth. This is why awakening often feels like losing your old life. The things that once defined you no longer satisfy you. The conversations that once mattered begin feeling shallow. The goals that once consumed you lose their emotional power. It is not because life has become meaningless. It is because your consciousness has outgrown the identity you've been living. Carl Jung called this the beginning of individuation, the moment when the false self can no longer carry the weight of your authentic life. It is uncomfortable. It is lonely. Sometimes it is painful, but it is also one of the most beautiful moments a human being can experience. Because for the first time you stop asking the world to tell you who you are, and you begin listening to the quiet voice that has been waiting inside you all along. The voice that doesn't ask you to become more. It simply asks you to become yourself. Perhaps the greatest lie you've ever believed is that you lost yourself. That somewhere along the way, the real you disappeared forever. Carl Jung would have disagreed. He believed that your true self cannot be destroyed. It can be forgotten, ignored, silenced, buried beneath years of expectations. But it can never truly disappear. Think about a seed buried beneath the ground. To someone standing above it, it looks like nothing exists. The earth appears empty, lifeless, but beneath the surface, life is quietly waiting for the right moment, the right conditions, the right amount of light. Your authentic self is no different. It has been waiting beneath every role you've played, beneath every fear that kept you silent, beneath every version of yourself created only to survive. Perhaps that strange feeling you've carried for years, that quiet sense that something is missing, has never been evidence that you're broken. Perhaps it has been your deepest self calling you home. Not home to a place, home to yourself. Jung believed this was the true purpose of life, not success, not perfection, not becoming someone admired by the world, but becoming the person you already are beneath every mask. That journey is called individuation. It is not about creating a new identity. It is about removing everything that was never truly yours. The fear that wasn't born with you. The shame that someone else placed upon you. The expectations you accepted without question. The endless pressure to become acceptable instead of authentic. Little by little, the masks begin to fall. The shadow no longer frightens you. The persona no longer controls you. The need for constant approval begins to fade. And something remarkable happens. For the first time in years, you begin to trust yourself, not because you suddenly know all the answers, but because you stop searching for them in everyone else. You realize that the voice you've spent your entire life trying to hear has always been your own. Quiet, patient, almost impossible to notice beneath the noise of the world. Yet it never stopped speaking. Perhaps this is why so many people describe awakening as a feeling of remembering rather than learning. You don't become someone new. You recognize someone ancient, someone who has existed since childhood. Before fear, before comparison, before shame, before the mask. And perhaps that is the most beautiful lesson Carl Jung ever offered humanity. You are not here to become the person everyone expects. You are here to become the person only you can become, because the world has enough performances, enough masks, enough people living someone else's life. What it desperately needs is people brave enough to live their own. So if you've spent years wondering why you no longer feel like yourself, maybe the answer is simpler than you imagined. You were never truly lost. You were simply buried beneath layers of fear, waiting for the moment you finally had the courage to come back home. And maybe that moment is today. Before you leave, I'd like to ask you for one small favor. If this video made you stop and reflect, if even one sentence helped you understand yourself a little more, subscribe to The Inner Shadow. Because this channel isn't about quick motivation or empty advice. Every week, we explore the timeless wisdom of Carl Jung, shadow work, the unconscious mind, and psychological transformation, helping you uncover the person you've always been beneath the mask. And if this journey resonated with you, please leave a like. That simple action helps YouTube recommend these conversations to people who may be silently struggling with the same questions you've carried for years. Finally, think of one person. Someone who no longer feels like themselves. Someone who smiles on the outside but feels empty within. Someone who has spent years trying to become who everyone else expected them to be. Share this video with them. You never know when one conversation, one insight, or one moment of recognition can completely change the direction of someone's life. Now, before you go, I want to leave you with one final thought. Perhaps you've spent years searching for yourself in places where you were never meant to be found. In success, in relationships, in other people's approval, in endless achievements, believing that if you could just become a little better, a little more successful, a little more accepted, you would finally feel whole. But maybe Carl Jung was right. Maybe you've never been searching for a better version of yourself. Maybe you've been searching for the version of yourself that existed before fear convinced you to wear a mask. The child who didn't need permission to dream. The soul that didn't compare itself to anyone. The person who never questioned whether they were enough. That person has never disappeared. They have simply been waiting, quietly, patiently, behind every expectation, behind every fear, behind every mask. So tonight, don't ask yourself, who should I become? Ask yourself something far more powerful. Who have I been pretending not to be? Because the answer to that question may be the beginning of the life you've been searching for all along. Until our next journey, take care of your mind, honor your shadow, trust your true self, and never forget. You were never lost. You were only waiting to remember who you truly are.